Good morning. Uh, Recently, an interesting topic came up with regard to a different video, and it kind of took itself onto a tangent, and it concerned the issue of age discrimination when it comes to Social Security disability. It was really tangential. It wasn't really part of the original video. The video was about the need consistently for actual ongoing current medical treatment or mental health or both, depending on what impairments you allege you have, continuously during your pending claim and to a large degree after you prevail due to the nature of CDRs, upcoming CDRs, etc. So a really attentive viewer asked about the concept of, well, what about a 65-year-old? There's very few employers that want to hire someone 65. They're not highly motivated to do so, which I understand. The question was, wouldn't it be fairer, and more reasonable for the SSA law to perhaps provide disability benefits for older people who will be age discriminated against in the job market, as well as disabled people? My response was something like this, and this is off the cuff as always, because I'm not here to research newer areas. I stick to my pay lane. But I thought it was really thoughtful, and I responded in kind to the post, but I thought I'd put it in a little video because it might interest other people. Age discrimination, which of course occurs, I have a feeling it occurs probably more than any other kind. That's just my personal opinion. It's much easier to get away with, and there's less repercussions, I suppose. Now, with Social Security disability, first of all, at 65, you might still be able to file if your dates fall in line. But remember, you can't file less than a year before your full retirement age. And it might be something slightly different than that, but about a year, due to the 12-month duration requirement. And there was a 5-month waiting period. So maybe it's like 17 months before your full retirement age. It just won't work. But so for people who are aged, now certainly if they're of full retirement age, they don't file for Social Security disability. They don't have to prove they're disabled. They just have to prove that they're of a certain age. So that is the way that avenue would go. Now, of course, at 62, you could file for early retirement and not bother to prove one is disabled, particularly if one is not, but you're going to suffer that discounted retirement rate for the rest of your living days. The age discrimination factor is not what can be really considered when a Social Security case is being handled. And the reason being, the whole question of disability is, are you able or unable to perform that job? It is not whether someone's going to hire you, whether they're going to like you, whether they engage in age discrimination. And I wanted to point out that we already have an agency, an administration that handles age discrimination. So you would be going to the EEOC. You would not be going to the SSA to seek money for age discrimination because you can't get a job, right? If you are disabled and aged, and when I say age, I mean, I'm over 50. So technically, and I'll get into this in a minute, there are special rules that they do apply for people over a certain age who make a claim for disability. It is not an age discrimination assessment, though. They're not giving us older folks the cut break because there will be age discrimination out there. Certainly not on paper, they're not. I really don't think they are. It has more to do with the ability to adjust to other work when we can't do the job we had in our past relevant period. PRW, past relevant work, currently the prior 15 years. So you've heard about the grids, being over 50, and there's so over 50 to 55, there is a certain special rule that applies that will find someone disabled because they are unable to transfer any skills to other work. And that would apply to someone who's still physically capable of doing sedentary work. But if they can't do the prior job and they can't transfer any skills to a different job, then it's considered a finding of disabled for the most part. From 55 to 60, same idea, but that inability to transfer skills, if they have an inability to transfer skills, would also mean that even if they could do light or sedentary work, but not their prior job, if they have no transferable skills to transfer to that light or sedentary job, then they're deemed to be disabled by and large because of that adjustment factor. It is harder as we get older to adjust, absorb, embrace new tasks and duties, even if we don't have something concrete wrong with us that would prevent us from being able to do it. I think of it kind of as you can't teach an old dog new tricks, you know? And when you're 60 and over, it's even more of a big window of what we can't transfer skills to or adjust to other work in different industries, even if physically we would be able to do it. So while the SSA does not handle age discrimination cases or give someone who's age disability if they haven't followed the rules to prove they are disabled, including some of these easier rules we have for us older folks, there is those older folk rules that make a big difference in getting older people awarded when they do have disabilities and they can't do their prior job. Okay. Age discrimination, whole different story. We have an agency for that. And like I said, you go and you file an age discrimination case. You don't go to the SSA and try to take from the fund if you're not disabled, right? Imagine if all the pay for aged people who can't find a job, but they're not disabled, if the Social Security Disability Fund went to them and not to disabled people, we wouldn't have a Social Security Disability Fund at all, right? It's stretched as it is. So age discrimination, if you think that's the issue, by all means, file a complaint with the EEOC and let them work it up. But it wouldn't be something that comes into a Social Security disability claim. And as I said before, Social Security does provide full benefits for fully aged out people, meaning at full retirement age without having to prove disabled at all. So you kind of get what you want with that one. Based on age alone and not disability, you get your Social Security at full retirement age. You can even wait a few years if you want for it to be an even bigger amount, like a 30-something% increase if you wait till age 70. So there is that. But for those that are not that aged, now it's a disability finding. And there are special rules that do make it easier than those under 50. So there is that help, but it's not based on age discrimination. It's based on our human capacity to have a reduced ability, I suppose, to adjust to other work, to transfer old skills we learned to a new unrelated job that would be more physically within our capabilities. But the law recognizes almost an innate reduction in our capacity to transfer skills to a new industry, even if we don't have a disability in that area. No mental diagnoses. It's just the way it is. We get a little slower. Okay, so I hope that explains it. And I do think if there is absolutely age discrimination, and it's not necessarily that they don't even think you can do the job. I think sometimes it has to do with an employer's, particularly if they're younger, but not necessarily, probably perception that we olders might be more set in our ways as to how things get done and might be a little less, this is just speculation on my part, but we might be a little less acquiescing to, say, a strategy or a process at the job that we know from umpteen years of experience is a poor choice of method. But you start telling that to a superior, you're probably going to get fired. So they don't really want us, particularly those of us that have a lot of experience, perhaps we're very successful. There is going to be potentially that butting of heads if it's certainly skilled work, but possibly even in unskilled areas too. more manual labor, or, not multiple step tasks that have to be done on the job. I think it can be across the board. So anywho, that's my take on that. If you have any thoughts on it, the age discrimination, where you go to file that, if you think you haven't gotten a job simply because of your age. I mean, there's a reason why people often don't put their dates in their resumes anymore when they're over a certain age. I don't even have a resume anymore, but I do probably. It's probably about 15 years old, sitting in my archives here on the computer. But even then, I'd stopped putting in dates, because the reason why I think age discrimination laws, they typically, and I don't study this area, but I remember having to take it in law school and all that. I think it was between the ages of 40 and 70, you could not be discriminated against on the basis of age. If you're younger than 40 or older than 70, apparently you could be. Don't hold me to the details. So if someone sees that I know they say this in the law all the time. When I was younger, I actually worked for a legal recruiting agency very briefly. And if you saw, some of the people I would see this from some of them. If they saw a person over 35 or 40, and we were all way younger at the time, they're like, he's looking for a job. He's obviously got nothing going on. Like, it was really bad. They were definitely looking for young people who maybe only had a few years in. Number one, they're going to be cheaper to hire. Number two, they're not going to be set in their ways. They're not going to know better than you do, because they're still clueless with only a few years of experience. So that's kind of what they were looking for. Perhaps people that they could really, corral them to do it a certain way, more than they might be able to do it with a more experienced person, which for practical reasons is an older person, right? So anyway, it was all kind of fascinating. I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. The age discrimination, the more difficult to get a job when we're older. I would say specifically, well, not necessarily. I was going to say higher skilled jobs might be harder to get, but on the same token, some advanced fields, they recognize that you have to have 20 years in before you're going to know as much as is needed to know to be one of the top dogs. So anyway, any thoughts on that? Please feel free to share. I thought it was a lot of fun. Bye now.